Hi everyone, here is the video. It's Sunday morning. Sorry, this is a little bit late. So I asked you in class, right? We had this. I know I'm slightly obsessed with this piece of Gemara, but I promise that it will end with this video, and there's just a few pieces before we move on. So first of all, I asked you in class to kind of go ahead and try to do your best at highlighting kind of the ping and pong and kind of highlighting where sentences begin and end. And this was actually not an easy task. This was kind of difficult. And I think we all appreciated how when there's no punctuation and when that is a real barrier to kind of understanding what the Talmud is saying and why it's saying it. And there used to be word for word translations of the Talmud out there, the most notable called the Sansino version of the Talmud, and they just basically almost put the entire Talmud into a word for word translation. And people were like, "Oh yeah, it's a translation, and everyone can understand them." But actually, it wasn't the case, and I think you saw that the other day when you were trying to do this, that it's not the case. You can just kind of, oh, because I understand the words, it means I understand what's going on. That you have to really understand the code words, you have to understand the logic, have to understand there's always this back and forth, and you have to kind of understand kind of the hidden meaning. So I went ahead and kind of said, well, what would this look like if we, and obviously the biggest piece was right here, right? This idea of that we kind of all got a little bit stumped on for like, what is this? Not he has not eaten. No, 1-8. If a fire ignited in the right. What is this? Not he has not eaten. No, 1-8. Right, and we saw this in the Talmud. It was also kind of a strange language. My lav, is it not the lo achal, that he has not eat, or my lav, is it not that he has not eaten? No, he actually ate, right? So obviously, what was that talking about? That was talking about when we're trying to understand if there are 3 meals or 4 meals, and we use the Mishnah to try to understand that. And they're saying, oh, wait a second, but you're assuming that he hasn't eaten that meal, but and that's why the Mishnah is saying you can save the meals that are left. But what if we assume that he already ate that meal, and then all of a sudden it kind of raises the possibility there could be 4 meals in Shabbat and not just 3. So again, and we saw it again there, and we saw it again there. And again, if you get that wrong, you're going to get this whole piece wrong. So I went ahead and kind of split up the sentences and kind of tried to kind of see what it looks like. And here it is again. And then I realized that actually, right, it's not just about splitting up these sentences that's going to help us make sense, but it actually is an explanation as well. So then I went ahead and said, well, what would it look like if I actually put an explanation? And so basically, I've kept everything non-gray if it is just kind of part of the Talmud itself, and I put everything gray that actually is just an explanation. And so I hope you'll appreciate by this that, wow, there's a lot that we need to kind of add from our own kind of intellect and own thinking to kind of help make sense. And that's why you often study Talmud with a chavruta, with a study partner who kind of helps you kind of understand and refine your own thinking about where the text is going. That's why you kind of make sure that you really know these key technical terms, these terms like Ella, these terms like Kate Saad, that kind of help you understand what you know is coming next, right? When I see the word Kate Saad, what does that mean? How does it, when I know it means, how is this the case? And I know what's going to come next is the case. When I see the word Ella, I know that basically I'm going to reject what was before, but have a completely new situation. When I see Tanu Rabbanan, I know that or I know that what's going to come is a Mishnah, is a Breita that is going to maybe prove something or not prove something. And now the new term here, when I see the word mani, it's kind of saying who is the author of this Mishnah. So the final piece, I'm going to kind of take us through from the top to bottom, using my explanation as well of this entire piece of Talmud. So it's 1 page, 2 page, 3 page. I'm going to go through it quickly, but I just want to make sure that we can kind of wrap it up in a nice bow, put it aside, and move to our next unit. So here we go. And it says added in red because first I had it in red and it looked very, very sanguine. sanguine, right? Very bloody. So I changed it to gray. That's why you see a little bit of red. Okay. So here we go. The Mishnah says, how so do we save meals if a fire ignited in a house on Shabbat? The Gemara brings a question. The sages taught in a Braita, how many meals is a person obligated to eat on Shabbat? So again, it's a question that was not necessarily from the Mishnah, but they're using the Mishnah to support it. They're going to use it. So the rabbis say we must eat 3 meals on Shabbat. Reb Chitka says we must eat 4 meals on Shabbat. Rabbi Yochanan said, and both of them, rabbis and Reb Chitka, derived their opinion from one verse, and the verse is, and Moses said, "Eat it today, for today is Sabbath for God. Today you will not find it in the field." And Rab Chitka held that these 3 words today doesn't include the evening meal. So there are 3 todays plus the Friday meal that is not mentioned. So that means there are 4 meals total. But the rabbis hold 3 mentions of the word today does include the Friday night meal, which means there are 3 meals total that we must eat on Shabbat. So we have this machloket between the larger group of rabbis and Reb Chitka, one saying 3 meals, one saying 4 meals. And so we're going to use the Mishnah about what you save to kind of help us kind of try to come to a solution here. And I hope you've kind of seen this enough to know that we're going to it seems like the Mishnah is proving the rabbis, but they're going to say, well, actually it could prove Reb Chitka with that special weird term that we had kind of before, which I'll probably ask you to kind of explain, right? That term right here. Is it not that he ate, that he is not eaten? No, he actually ate, right? And so I'll probably ask that on the quiz. All right, so here we go. So we learned in the Mishnah, and now we're trying to prove which one of these guys is correct, right? If a fire ignited on Shabbat evening, one rescues 3 meals, which comes to show us that we actually have a max of 3 meals on Shabbat. And since the fire breaks out on Friday night and there are 3 meals for Shabbat that must be eaten, she saves 3 meals. So the Mishnah proves that there are only 3 meals that must be eaten, because if we needed to eat 4 meals, the Mishnah would have had us save 4 meals and not 3 meals. And what is this not? Isn't this is this not? You are thinking that he is not. I can't even do it correctly. What is this not? Isn't this is the what? Are you thinking that he has not eaten? You're making a big assumption that when the fire breaks out on Friday night, no meals have been eaten yet. But no, a person has already eaten, and this is going to be right, his Friday meal. And that is why the Mishnah only has us saving 3 meals, because if he had not eaten the Friday meal, the Mishnah would have actually said 4 meals. So basically, that's really going to be, and that's going to come up again and again, right? The fire ignited in the morning, one may rescue only food for 2 meals, which comes to show us that we only have a max of 3 meals on Shabbat. And since the fire breaks out on Saturday morning and there are 2 meals left for Shabbat that must be eaten, she saves 2 meals. The Mishnah proves that there are only 3 meals that must be eaten. 1 last night, which was already eaten, and 2 more to come. Because if we needed to eat 4 meals, the Mishnah would have had us now save 3 meals and not 2. And of course, what is this? Are you thinking that he has not yet eaten? You're making a big assumption that when the fire breaks out on Saturday morning, only 1 meal has been eaten. But no, actually, a person has already eaten, meaning he ate his Saturday noon meal after praying. And that's why the Mishnah only has us now saving 2 meals. So the 2 meals have already been eaten, 1 from last night and 1 from this morning. And the 2 meals to come, that equals 4 meals. And if he had not eaten that Saturday noon meal, the Mishnah would have actually said, save 3 meals at this time, according to Reb Chitka. So we're kind of always justifying Reb Chitka. And we're going back to the Mishnah. If the fire ignited in the afternoon, one rescues only 1 meal, which comes to show us that we only have a max of 3 meals on Shabbat. For since the fire broke out on Saturday afternoon, there's only 1 meal left for Shabbat that must be eaten. This is why she saves 1 meal. This part of the Mishnah proves there are only 3 meals that must be eaten on Shabbat. 1 last night, 1 this morning, and 1 more is to come. Because if we needed to eat 4 meals, the Mishnah would have had to save 2 meals at this point, right? Right, and not 1. And what? Again, this phrase again, what? Are you thinking he has not eaten? No, that person has already eaten, meaning he's already eaten that meal, and that's why they only have 1 to save. So he's eaten actually 3 meals at this point, 1 last night, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, and the Mishnah is still saying save 1 equals 4 meals. Okay, so we've now done a good job proving that Reb Chitka could have written could have written this Mishnah up to now, but we've forgotten to read the last line of the Mishnah. And from the fact that it's taught the end of the Mishnah, the Rabbi Yossi says one may always rescue food for three meals. It is obvious that even the first Tana, the ones who's not named, who we're calling the rabbis, but has said everything up until now, also holds there are only three meals. Ella, right? Instead, we can now make a pretty definite claim that it's clear that the Mishnah is not in according to Rab Chidka. But since we're on the subject and we've just learned about the views of rabbis from Rab Chidka, we should also now be able to make a conclusion about who is not the author of the next Mishnah that we're going to, or next Mishnah, right? Said Mishnah here, and that which we learned in another Mishnah. Here it comes, and here's another Mishnah. So this has nothing to do with the previous argument. Where now we're just kind of like, as we're on the subject and we've shown that actually who this Mishnah is by. Let's look at this other Mishnah and ask if one who has found food for 2 meals may not take from the charity plate food, and for 14 meals may not take from the weekly charity fund. Whose opinion is this Mishnah? From what we know now, the author of the Mishnah is not the rabbis and is not Rab Chidka. Because if the rabbis are the authors of the Mishnah, they would have said that a person is only considered poor enough to get charity if they have less than 15 meals per week. And if the Rab Chidka is the author of the Mishnah, he would have said that a person is only considered poor enough to get charity if he has less than 16 meals a week, right? Because the author of the Mishnah was saying there are 2 meals a day. 2 times 7 is 14. But we know that the rabbis are saying there are 3 meals on Shabbat. So at least there's 2 times 6, 12 plus 3 equals 12 plus 3 is right, 15. And then Rabbi Chizkiah would say 2 times 6 equals 12 plus 4 equals 16. So at this point, we feel like we can make a claim. Hey, this Mishnah was not written by the rabbis, was not written by Rabbi Chizkiah, so it was written by someone else. But we're still going to see if we can actually justify that both of them could have been the writers of the Mishnah, because actually we can show you how the rabbis could be the author of the Mishnah, and here's how. We say to the poor person who eats only 14 meals per week to kind of have double duty for one of these meals. That which you wanted to eat at the conclusion of Shabbat, right, which you would have said 2 meals, eat at the conclusion of Shabbat, third meal on that which you would eat on the conclusion of Shabbat as the third meal on Shabbat. So just move your meal number 2 that you would have normally eaten on Saturday evening, move it closer into Shabbat before Shabbat is ended, and make that your third meal. So then actually you've got your 1 meal for Friday night, you've got your 1 meal for the morning, and you've got your third meal during the day. So the rabbis can come up with 3. According to the reasoning, we should now be able to say, let us say that this Mishnah is written by the rabbis and not written by Reb Chizkiah, right? Because Reb Chizkiah is going to have a hard time manipulating his meals to get 4 meals. But we can see how 3 meals could be possible. All they have to do is take that meal at night and bring it closer to the day. So you're not eating at 9 o'clock, you're eating more like 5:30 or something like that, right? It means you're probably going to have a hungry night a little bit. Maybe there's a snack or something like that you can eat. Okay. But now we're going to try to support Reb Chizkiah. But even if you say the Reb Chizkiah is the author of the Mishnah, it could also make 100% sense. Here's how. As we can say to him, the poor person who eats 14 meals a day, that which you want to eat on Shabbat Eve, and Shabbat Eve here, they mean your meal number 1 on Friday morning. It's really Friday Shabbat, pre-Shabbat, meaning the pre-Shabbat meal that you would be eating, not meal number 2 of your day, but meal number 1. Your meal number 1 on Friday morning, then move it and eat it at night on Shabbat instead. And this will give you 4 Shabbat meals. Meal number 1 for Shabbat is moved from Friday morning up to Friday night. Meal number 2 is the second meal on Friday night, right? So you're eating 2, right? That's 2. And then the 2 more on Saturday day, right? According to how the rabbis did it. 1 for the morning and then taking 1 from the like 10 o'clock at night and moving that more to the day. Right, 1 in the morning, 1 moved from later on to the afternoon of Shabbat. So according to this reading, the author of the Mishnah could be Rabbi Chidka. And if this is true, and the meal is moved up from Friday morning is moved up, that would mean that we would do we have a person sit and fast all day on Shabbat Eve? Meaning, if we move that meal from the morning all the way up to Friday night, that means that we're having someone fast all day on Friday. And actually, Emily Rockout brought up to me, oh, isn't actually there a custom that some people actually don't eat it all on Friday, so like the taste of the Shabbos meal can be even stronger. And if they do, that would probably be rejected actually from this Mishnah, because here we're seeing that Reb Chizkiah is making people fast, and they're rejecting that. That seems like the wrong thing to do. So if it was the right thing to do, and Emily was correct in that tradition that she heard, then we would have heard that the Mishnah coming back and saying, actually, we have a tradition that says that you, or the Gemara will come back, we have a tradition that actually this group of people do fast, so actually it's okay to do that, right? Reb Chizkiah could be correct. But because that seems wrong that someone's fasting before Shabbat, we reject the idea that Reb Chizkiah could be the author of the Mishnah. And for some reason, I guess we also reject the rabbis can be the author of the Mishnah as well. Although I'm not totally sure why they're I understand why they're rejecting Chizkiah, but the rabbis aren't making you fast. But if they are not the authors of the Mishnah, who is? And it's according with whose opinion is this Mishnah? It's Rabbi Akiva who's the author of this Mishnah, who said, make your Shabbat like a weekday and do not be beholden to other beings. So according to Rabbi Akiva, the person who eats 14 meals a day only eats 2 meals on Shabbat, like a normal day of the week, if he only has 4 meals. By the way, I did a lot of reading on this idea during this past Shabbat, and there's a real tension actually between, do we really allow people to make Shabbat exactly the way it is during the week, or do we have to do something to make it special? And even though Rabbi Akiva says this, at least the final code say, no, actually you always have to make Shabbat special. This is only for someone who normally has the amount of money they need, and then all of a sudden they come in dire straits, and you don't want to embarrass that person. They have to go looking for food and looking for extra stuff for Shabbat. But typically, this is really, Rabbi Akiva is talking about the exception to the norm rather than anything else, and he was the writer of this Mishnah. All right, so that's it for this little piece. Now we're up to a new unit called Hashavat Aveda. And by the way, so I'll ask some questions about this on the quiz. Certainly, I'll ask about that weird phrase that kind of Reb Chizkiah is used to kind of show that Reb Chizkiah could be the author of the of the Mishnah that talks about saving from a fire. Okay, and I'll probably ask one or two other questions about this. Okay, now we're up to our new unit, Hashavat Aveda, returning lost objects. Some of you who took 10th grade Talmud with Rav Mendel, you may have done some of the work of this unit, but since we're not looking at all of the Mishnayot, which he does, which Rav Mendel does in his class, we're only looking at the first Mishnah and going very quickly to the Talmud pieces on this, which are pretty famous pieces of Talmud. So here we go. Hashavat Aveda. So obviously, so this comes from chapter 2, Mishnah 1 of Bava Metzia. This is in Seder Nizikim. There are 6 books of the 6 Seders of the Mishnah. This is Seder Nizikim, damages, and Bava Metzia is the second Masechet in that section, and that's really what we're going to be looking at. A few words to kind of start out our I guess this should be on some kind of animating thing. So all right, so I don't know what happened to the words here, but there was a returning lost objects is Hashavat Aveda. Let me see if I come at this. Here we go. So here we have our 3 key vocabulary words to know. Returning lost objects is called Hashavat Aveda. If I'm obligated to announce something, right? Because a lot of the things, one of the things we're going to be talking about is when I find an object, do I need to kind of announce that that object is lost? Or am I allowed to just keep what I found? And what are the criteria for that? So the 3 keywords that we need to know, besides Hashavat Aveda, returning lost objects, is, am I obligated to announce stuff I don't get to keep, right? So this means chayav. We've had this word chayav before, obligated, lahakriz. Chayav lahakriz, obligated to announce. Or is it a mitziot shelo? Is it his own findings, mitziot shelo, meaning stuff that I would get to keep if I saw it? Good. So let's go back to our unit here. Okay. Oh, there it is. Look at that. There's all the stuff. Okay, so imagine for a moment that you have found a chicken, okay? And what I'd like you to think about at this moment is I found the chicken, and what do I do? Do I keep it or do I try to return it, right? So here's a couple things I can be thinking. Hey, I've always wanted the chicken, and besides Thomas Shabbat, I love chicken soup. Let me keep that chicken. But there's someone out there who's very sad to have lost her chicken. I better try to return it. So kind of which way do I go here? Am I allowed to keep that chicken? Am I not allowed to keep it? So think about that. And then kind of what's going in your mind. Let's suppose that actually they say, okay, someone out there, there is someone who's tried, I better try to return that chicken. Someone's probably very sad they don't have it anymore. So what questions do I now need to kind of ask myself? So think about that for a moment. All right, how do I go about returning it? And what if the way I go about returning it costs money? Who's going to pay for that in the end, right? So try to answer those questions. And then okay, so here's possible things that happen next. Here I am putting up a sign, okay, and either this costs money for me to print this out, right? I went to a copy machine a store and had to pay some money about a chicken. And and or it took opportunity costs, right? It took time when I could have been kind of doing other work and making money doing that. So it certainly costs something. Okay, so let's move on. um, and so what's going to happen next? Right? So someone's going to come and say, right, there are two possible things that are going to happen next. Either here I am waiting, right? I put up the signs and no one is coming, or someone's going to come and say, hey, I lost the chicken. I think that chicken you found is mine. Right? So these are two possibilities. And the question is, what do each of these possibilities, what do each of these bring up? So let's explore both one at a time. So possibility number one, no one is coming for this chicken. What questions do you now need to ask, right? You need to ask questions like, I'm sick of waiting. How much longer do I need to wait until I can be convinced that no one's ever going to come for this chicken? While I'm waiting and the chicken is laying eggs every day, can I eat those eggs? And while I'm waiting, I need to feed this chicken every day. Who's going to pay for that? Okay. So those are kind of questions that need to be asked. Okay. Next up. I'm now convinced no one will ever come for the chicken. What questions do you now need to ask? Right now, right? What do I do with the chicken now? Right? And there are two or three possible answers to the question. What could be possible answers? Well, either I get to keep it, or I have to return it to the spot where I found it, or maybe I have to kind of like sell it and give that money to tzedakah or give it to someone, right? Because it's not truly, really mine. Is it okay? But what happens if actually the other possibility, when you put up your sign, someone says, I lost the chicken. I think the chicken you found, I lost the chicken. I think the chicken you found is mine. So what happens now? What are the questions that need to be asked, right? All right, how do I figure out if she's telling the truth, right? How do I know, right? She might be lying. Right? What do I do? So how would you answer this question? All right, so let's go over a couple more pieces of vocabulary here that are important to know for our unit. So we've got returning lost objects, hashavat, which is, okay. I'm going to fix right, which is hashavat aveda. Obligated to announce, this is stuff I don't need to keep, which is called chayav lahakriz. His findings, or mitziut shelo, right? Stuff that he found, meaning stuff he finds and says, I can actually keep that. Returning ownership, renouncing ownership so that it's free for everyone to take. So this is an interesting term called hefker. So hefker means that I, the owner of the object, are saying, I'm never going to find that object. It's never going to be found by me. I'm declaring this object to be hefker, meaning anyone can take it, and if they take it, they haven't stolen. Because there is a possibility if I don't announce that it's hefker, what could be the case? What could happen? If you take that object, you've actually stolen it from me because I haven't renounced ownership. I haven't said that's not going to belong to me. So we're going to look at kind of when do people say something is hefker and when not. And by the way, we often we have tables at school where kind of anyone can take kind of items of food from there and it doesn't belong to anyone. You put it there and you've renounced ownership, and that's called kind of a hefker table. Okay, next term we've had before, how or tell me a case like this. Ketzad. And the last term is that we're going to see is important is this word shinui. We actually saw it when I brought up that if you do an act on Shabbat with a shinui, with a change, that act might be allowed because I'm doing it in a non-normative way. All right. So last thing we're going to do today is So we just went through different steps and thought processes that should take place when you find a lost object. But isn't finding a chicken different than finding a piece of fruit? And isn't finding a piece of fruit different than finding a chewed up pencil? We will look shortly. We'll shortly be looking at a mission that will deal with these very, very similar subjects. The more you think about these issues now, the better prepared you will be to be able to study this mission. On the next slides, you'll see two different types of objects. Here's what you need to do. Explain how object A in the group is different than object B in the group, and explain how these differences affect whether you are chayav lakriz, meaning obligated to announce that object, or mitziot shelo. Okay, and I'll probably give you one or two of these on the quiz. So here we go. 25 cents versus a dollar, right? I found 25 cents versus I found a dollar. So how are these two objects different from each other, and how do the differences maybe affect whether something should be mitziot shelo or chayav lakriz? Okay, next one. $20 bill with a rubber band, 20 single dollar bills with rubber bands around them versus $21 bills that are scattered around. How are the objects different from each other, and how should that difference be a factor in determining whether something is chayav lakriz or mitziot shelo? Fruit that's scattered versus fruit that's in a bundle. Again, how are they different from each other, and how is this difference in determining how is this difference a determining factor, determining whether something is chayav lakriz or mitziot shelo? A new pasta maker still in its box versus a used pasta maker. How is the object on the left different from the object on the right? And how should the difference be a determining factor whether something is chayav lakriz or mitziot shelo? A homemade loaf of bread versus a store-made loaf of bread. How is this? What's the difference, and how is it difference in the determining factor here? Okay. Last thing, actually, really the last thing. Let's move on to the Torah for a minute and just look at what the Torah has to say about Hashavat Avedah. Okay, here's what it says. We've got really two main things that it says. Okay. Okay. Don't hide your eyes when you see a wandering ox or sheep of your brother. Return them, really return them to your brothers. And if your brother does not live close to you or you do not know him, then you will gather it into your home and it will stay with you until your brother seeks it out. Then you will return it to him. You must do the same thing for your donkey and for his clothing and for all the items that your brother has lost and you have found. You're not allowed to hide your eyes. If, and this is a second part of the Torah, it says, if you come upon an ox of your brother, or if you come upon his donkey his wandering donkey, return it, really return it. So these are two places in the Torah that talk about Hashavat Avedah. These are the only really two places that do it. So based upon the Torah, how would you answer the following questions? And what would be your, I don't know what I wrote there, but for some reason the Hebrew didn't come in. What would be your kind of your answer for I don't know what that is. Okay. So, if according to the Torah, if you find an item that is not yours, what must you do with it? According to the Torah, is there any item that you're allowed to keep if you find it? According to the Torah, what do you do if you can't find the owner? According to the Torah, how long must you wait with the object until the owner comes for it? According to the Torah, what can you do with the object while the owner has not come for it? Can the finder use it or not? According to the Torah, is there a point after the finder has waited 1 week or 1 year or 10 years that the object becomes the finder? Okay. And the very final thing that I want us to look at is just the psychology, the psychology of our finder and loser. Okay. So what is and this is the final question before we go to our Mishnah. The psychological mindset of the loser, right? If the loser must think about as he decides if he should look for his lost item, what is the loser thinking about? Okay. And then because am I going to go looking for that object, or I'm going to call it hefker? I'm going to renounce my ownership of it. And what is the psychological mindset of the finder, the one who's going to say, I'm going to announce I'm going to announce it and I'm not going to keep it. I'm going to chayav lakriz and I'm not mitziot sheli or shalom, right? The things the finder needs to think about if she decides if she should announce this lost object or not, okay? So those are things I want you to think about, and that's it for today. So hope this helps you prepare for your Tuesday quiz. Bye.